From the bench to the bleachers, you are listening to the only podcast in Ontario that keeps you in the game.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's do this. My next guest on In the Game is the bassist and lead singer of the band Deep Blues Something. Coming from Dallas, Texas, is Todd Pipes. Todd, you are in the game.
Strumming away, were you? Were you just waiting for me to pop up?
I really figured, take it down a little bit before we start.
Awesome. So yeah, I appreciate you jumping on. I really like having you. One, because I know from some research in the past, obviously, I own an agency that deals with hockey players. We're obviously going through this pandemic and the coronavirus stuff, and a lot of things have been put on halt, just like musicians and everything else, right? And I kind of had some time to catch up and be mindful of myself and take time for myself. And I bought a new vehicle. It's funny, I started this project about 4 months ago, but I bought a new vehicle last month, the Dodge Challenger. And on that Challenger, I have a playlist, and, I have artists that I've listened to. I'm 41, so I grew up with really getting into music around 1989 and into the 90s as a teenager. So for myself, I knew who you were, and the research that I did, some of it indicates that your band members or yourself growing up were into sports or like sports or followed sports. So for me, the show is based largely around in the game. And to me, the game is an industry, entertainment. If you're a musician, it's an industry. It's a game. You work your way, or it's played a certain way. With record labels and contracts and all that type of stuff and how things work. But also I have pro athletes on that have won Super Bowls and Stanley Cups. So it's kind of nice to have different genres of music for fans that listen to my show. But as well, we have, UFC fighters and pro hockey players and basketball players. So it's a little bit of something for everyone. And I think that's what the world is missing right now. Mm-hmm. We're going through a lot of stuff you're hearing about. In Canada, not so much, but down in the States, the tensions and political, and I miss the times like the 90s, and I'm thinking you're going to agree on this. What happened to Woodstock 94, Woodstock 99, Lollapalooza, where we didn't care about what color your skin was. We didn't care about your religion. We didn't really talk politics. We showed up. We listened to Deep Blue Something. We listened to, Tonic, or we listened to Filter or whoever, and we had a damn good time. Yeah. Are we missing that?
I think so. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
for sure.
Like, music does a lot of things for people. Let's start with you first and foremost. What has music done for you? Like, how did this start for you? Did you get involved with it from a musical family? Because I'm finding a lot of musicians, that's where it starts for them, is they really had some inspiration at a young age from somebody in their family. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, definitely. So my parents are both like legit singers, like, what I would consider real. And so they actually got through college on vocal scholarships.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So when they sing, that's the real thing. What we do is just whatever. It's not. You know what I'm saying?
No,
like I don't take rock music singers very seriously. To me, if you can carry a tune, you can sing.
Yeah, so, it's arts and entertainment, right? Versus artistic. And when you mean artistic, is like your parents, where
it's being able to sing anything and to do it correctly and reading music and all that.
Yes.
So even though they were not music majors, that's what their scholarship. That's what got them through school.
Really.
And so they were always listening to music. It was mostly classical, especially with my dad. He listened to more classical, but the two of them together listened to a lot of kind of that late 60s folk music.
Yep.
So kind of like Mamas and the Papas, lots of Simon and Garfunkel, the Seekers, all those kinds of bands. And so that's deep rooted into my musical memory. And so there's always music, and there's always us goofing around in the house. There's a piano that we would goof around on. But what really like got me into wanting to do it was when I was on the bus in second grade and I heard the older kids rumbling about this band called Kiss. I was like, what's this all about? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because when Kiss first came out, that was some out there crazy stuff. Like it was like Alice Cooper, but times 10. Like it was dark. They wore leather. There were knives in the pictures. Yeah. You know, it wasn't what Kiss had became later. It was sinister.
Yeah. It made Elvis Presley look like juvenile.
Right.
Right. You know,
it was like, hey, what's this all about? Because the old kids was like Kiss, and then everybody drawing the logo. So I knew what they all looked like long before I heard the music, because it was banished in my house. You couldn't. That was satanic, which made me want it even more. So that's what made me start going, wow, what's this all about? Like you could be in a band, and you know. So from second grade on, that's what I wanted to do. I don't know what sparked it other than seeing that and thinking, this is like crazy land. You know, this is weird. And I like weirdness, and I was always kind of attracted to like horror movies and stuff. So I was like, oh, this is a horror movie band. I'm all about this. So that's what kind of got me on the road to it.
You know, it's interesting that you're saying that, because I spoke with Brian Vander Ark from the Verb Pipe probably about a month ago, and man, you guys had the same story.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty close, right? So for him, the upbringing was the same, and he tells me his parents were actually church singers, soloists and duet, right? And they were Dutch, and they were very religious. And again, like you said, the sinister side of it. He had the same story when he got into the liking of his music. It was like, yeah, that stuff, you know, like when I asked about his mom and I said about like, oh, you mean like the beehive hair style? And she said, well, that would have been a little sinister for my mom, right? Like a little too. So it's interesting how, again, like I said, I'm finding that with the musicians that, you know, it all started with, and I'm not going to say rebellion, like there's music in the house, and yes, times have changed, and your family started as, like you said, it's respectful, classical music, and then you kind of stumbled on to what you found. So I'm going to ask you this, and I'm sure most of the artists I speak to agree. You have kids. How old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
My son turns 20 this week, and my daughter is 16.
Okay, so I have an 18-year-old, and I have a soon-to-be 13-year-old. So you and I both see what's going on in the realm of the world of kids with what's hip, what's hop, with music. Are you noticing that the kids are not understanding where music comes from? Like, meaning your Post Malone, or maybe yourself, where you and I grew up. When I grew up with my parents, and you already said this, my parents listened to Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley, Richie Valens, Little Richard, Jerry Lewis, Big Bopper, up to the Stones, Zeppelin. So you see the evolution of music. Like me as a kid, I got that from my parents. When I was in the 90s, I guess, and you'll understand this. So 13, 14, I started with Nirvana when it exploded. Okay. Sure. I didn't know this until I sat and watched Unplugged. You know, when they sang "Where'd You Sleep Last Night" was a Ledbetter tune. Who the hell is that, right? So I'm a guy that wants to know, where did this song come from? Because, you know, Kurt did it brilliantly. So I go back and I look, and I'm like, what? Like from the 1930s? It was like an African-American guy. He was in prison. But I'm understanding it's the rockabilly and the blues from decades ago that inspired an artist decades forward. So are you sensing that kids are losing that, meaning the sense of where their artists they're following got their inspiration from?
Yeah, but I think that there's a reason for it. Okay, so when we were growing up, and especially like, you know, I was there at the dawn of MTV, right? There were still a lot of artists that were doing well in the 80s that had started in the 60s. The Who being one. The Who was massive in the 80s. Same thing with Yes, and Genesis for that matter. And so Whereas today that would never happen.
Yeah.
All of the artists are like, if you get to 22, you're done, you know? So I think the reason that today's teenagers or young people in general don't have the historical connection is because there are no even slightly older artists from the time period before.
Yeah.
You don't have, like, let's say, an adult artist breaking through the top 40.
Yeah.
In the 90s, you had that.
Yeah.
You know, or you would have something that was wildly out of context pop through. Like, you'd never have an Enya today.
Yeah.
It wouldn't happen ever. You wouldn't have, think about how far into the 90s and beyond Tina Turner came.
Yeah.
And so again, there's no context because there's no reference point for it.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what's always weird to me is somebody will cover a song and I'll be like, hey, that's the such and such. And my kids will be like, what are you talking about? Like, that's a cover. You don't know. And they have no idea, or just this one tiny part of a song will be covered. And it's this new hit, but no one has a frame of reference. So you're like, well, okay. It's an odd time.
Is it important though? Is it important that we almost like history, right? Like, I mean, like you talked about artists going in the 90s, like if Freddie Mercury hadn't have passed away, I mean, I'm pretty sure those guys still would have rocked in the 90s. A different genre from, let's call Green Day, Offspring, Nirvana, or, you know what, two groups that I group everybody in is, and you guys were in that era, is, you know, you have the loud and angry and whatever, right? Like, I mean, and then you still had groups that were sometimes writing either love songs or writing sad, depressing songs, but the music was still poppy and happy, right? Sure. Like whether it's, like I said, Tonic, whether it's like I listened to a song today on the way home, Laid by James, right? The song, right? Okay, right. So it's not grunge, but it's out there and it was hip and it's still, you know, and I find that some of those artists like Queen still could have created their stuff in the middle of all that and been successful. Yeah.
But I think the issue there that we face that's different is there were still lots of the radio formats were still pretty widespread. Like you had a rock station and then we also had like a metal station.
Yeah.
And then we had an alternative station and then the R&B. Right now, it's difficult for me to tell when my kids are playing something if something would be considered a pop song or an alternative song. Yeah. They sound very similar.
Yeah.
And because of that, again, you don't get the weird song kind of popping through, you know. It's odd from that standpoint, you know, and again, the kids miss out on things because they don't have any frame of reference. And I also just don't think that the natural curiosity is there. Like for me, when I discovered a new band, I would always try to read an interview and see kind of, well, what bands do they like? You know?
Yeah.
So I guess as far back, you may hear some new band and, oh yeah, back in the day, we used to like Blink-182, but that's as far back as they ever go.
You know, I thought I knew a lot of bands in the 90s. I just found a band. You're probably going to laugh. You'll probably know them. I didn't know them. And again, with that Dodge Challenger I bought, there's XM in there, right? So we'll talk about that. And then I want to talk about leading into your new music with these type of changes. The Dodge Challenger with the XM, I had it on lithium, which is, I mean, you're going to be on lithium. I mean, that's the generation. And I heard a song and I'm like, damn, this is good, right? And I liked it, and I'm like, it was a song called Stars by the band Hum. Have you heard it?
Yeah, of course.
I never.
That's
and they're from Chicago,
yeah,
and they're Illinois, and they're not too far, 6 hours away from me, and I'm surprised I never heard of them. I watched their videos for references, and I'm like, man, this is so awesome. I'm like, he plays it, and I'm not saying he played it like acted it, but it was like, the play is like he had the glasses, it looked nerdy, and he looked shy, and it was just awkward, which is what we were in the 90s, socially awkward, right? And it was like, and then bang, like he hit it, but it was not fully the anger grunge, and it was kind of the little poppy riff. And
yeah, it was the kind of in between. So
I discovered that 2 weeks ago.
And that's a great thing. And that's what I'm always seeking, things from different eras that I've forgotten. But okay, so if you like Hum, do you know a band called Teenage Fan Club?
See there, I've heard the name and I've never listened to them, but I'm not familiar with them. No.
Okay,
so I'll have to listen to that one.
There's this, if you want to start with Teenage Fan Club, there's a song called Star Sign.
Okay.
So
good one.
Kind of similar in that kind of trippy, kind of rocking, not too rocking kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I was shocked, and I'm like, because I, to be honest with it, I don't know why or how, but I had Elmo Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets on month and a half, 2 months ago, and there's some of their music is. At first, I was driving and I was confused, and I'm like, it kind of sounded a bit like the Meat Puppets. They have a really weird, like, almost want to say nerdy style to the original Lake of Fire and Oh Me and those songs. They're awkward, and then when I heard it, I'm like, it almost sounds like Meat Puppet. And I'm looking, I'm like, who are these? Hum, like, never heard of them. So I went back, watched the video. It's on my playlist now, right? So yeah, it's kind of unique that type of access has come to us, like that technology. So I want to ask you, leading up to your new music now, but because when you were into the scene, Napster was there. And then now all of a sudden you talk about the birth of an iPod, and you have MP3s, and now Spotify and the digital age. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a studio, or you do producing, or is that correct with your studio?
Yeah. So my brother and I opened a studio in '98.
Okay.
And it actually grew into a pretty big facility. And so we went full time into production for like a decade.
Yeah.
And that was really, it kind of led to the real demise of the band. Cause as soon as I started doing that, that's what I wanted to do. Cause we had been on the road enough. I was done. And so I was like, I can work on all these records. And so we ended up doing that. We eventually ended up shutting the studio down, but in the last couple of years, I actually built a new studio here on my property. And so I do production stuff here, and I absolutely love it.
See, it leans right into that. And that was my thing. 98 is when you started. So everything started coming around that Napster in that kind of late 90s. So you built your studio. Another one I talked to was Christopher Thorne from Blind Melon. He's got his own studio. And what I'm finding is that we shifted, okay? Like, we were at a point, I thought, of commercialization. Guns N' Roses and, Dave Geffen and all these, the big powerhouses of the industry were really controlling everything. And like Christopher Thorne said, what ruined or made your career was Spin Magazine or Rolling Stones, right? Because you really never had the digital age with, if they told you that Deep Blue Something sucked, that next album, then it killed you, right?
Yeah, they were gatekeepers.
That's what he called them, gatekeepers, right? He said there was two gatekeepers, and what I'm getting at is you shifted to that late 90s, and people like yourself, where you took the step into your own production, and you had Spotify and all those type of things come later. People have been able to kind of take control of their own destiny a little bit, meaning for creativity, because I know I've talked to some artists about the pressure of signing a contract under a label, and this is what they expect. Like, we got No Rain from Blind Melon, we're expecting No Rain too, or we got the Villains from the Bird Pipe, and this is what you pumped out, the Frog album, So those guys keep saying the same thing of I think, to me, I agree, commercialization kind of killed the industry as far as artistry went, because artists were losing control of what they wanted to do. But now the new age has come. You can record an album in your basement if you want, meaning you, Todd Pipes, or your own record. You can distribute it on your own. You can do I know you're going to be more self-financed now, because, those labels will be the one to foot the bill. Has it gotten worse or better for you as an artist, the changes that we've shifted to with ability to create your own music without the support of a major label?
Now it has finally gotten better, but I would say 10 years ago or so, it was still pretty iffy.
Yeah.
The internet was there, But the problem was at that time, even going back 15 or even close to 20 years ago, Napster was a horribly dangerous thing.
Oh, for sure.
Now, the thing it did that was beneficial was it really shook up the record companies, okay, because they were bloated and they were still doing things uncreatively and lots of silly things. So it was good to kind of shake that tree pretty violently. But it killed a lot of artists. I mean, just decimated. There's like probably 5 to 10 years in there where things will just, if you went back in the course of musical history, that would be like a dark age period. There was lots of stuff that came out and lots of stuff that just went nowhere. So, and again, because the gatekeepers were still in place, because everything was still very much radio based. And that was also the time that radio stations started becoming parts of conglomerates.
Yes.
Or yes, you've got an alternative station in this town, but it's playing the exact same playlist as these other 20 or 50 stations.
Almost like a syndication of the same stuff.
So that's a big gatekeeper person. And so you couldn't get through to anything. Now, you could have a record and never get a single spin on a radio station and get millions of plays. You know what I'm saying? Like it has completely worked itself out.
Yeah.
So if you're in a position to where you can create content that is at least close to what professional level would be, and you can fudge that to an extent, all you have to do is find a way to create or find your niche of an audience and get it in front of them. It's getting a little bit difficult because there's an incredible amount of content out there, but it is still doable. And the main thing is you're free to do so.
That's the art. I just said that, right? With the artistry, you are free.
Yeah.
You are now the artist, meaning truly the artist and in control of your destiny or what you produce. Yeah.
Now, the one problem is, and this is what I tell lots of people, and I've actually, my son has gotten into music.
Yep.
And what I tell people is, do not seek to do this professionally. You're not going to make money.
Yep.
It will take it used to be, you could go make a record for $2,500, print up a bunch of CDs and sell those CDs for $10 a pop.
Those were the good days, to be honest with you, right? I mean,
you gas money to get to the next town, and you could build it and that kind of thing. Now you have to understand you may spend 4 or 5 years of releasing lots of content before you ever start getting traction. So go get a regular job. And in doing so, you can remain purely artistic. You're not chasing any dollar because there's no dollar to chase right now.
That's right. Yep.
So as long as people keep that perspective, that's great. It is sort of odd, though, that you can have an artist that could have millions of plays on Spotify and the band's not making minimum wage.
I was going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you that. So if those artists are creating their own content, producing it and putting it on Spotify, like even the big labels, somebody that's under a big label and their music is on Spotify, are the record companies still winning there, taking their portion? And also, like you said, the young artist that has their stuff, I mean, they're still being controlled because, I mean, like you said, Spotify's got to be making, you know what I mean? Like, how do we fix that? How do you get millions of views and not be an influencer or not,
Yeah. Okay. So here's the real issue with Spotify and things like it. When that was happening, there were side deals cut with the major labels. Okay.
Well, this is the repeated thing I've heard from 3 other major artists, right?
There's no way that the major label is going to allow there to be 50 billion plays and it only creates a few cents. So that immediately tells you, okay, well, that's what the artist is getting.
Yeah.
The label has cut a side deal. Okay. Yeah. Because there's insane amounts of money being produced. And that's another thing that young people don't seem to get. You're paying, like, how much is a Spotify thing?
Yeah, like let's just even say $9 a month or $6.99 a month or whatever.
Okay.
By millions.
Yes, and especially when you think about you're paying that every single month.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you might buy a new CD, maybe one every couple of months. So you're spending more in the long run than you ever would have. So the revenue is being generated. It's just there's a hand over here that's getting greased, and the independent artist is getting the same cut, and
no one's getting ahead. I mean,
but this is one of those things of, you mentioned kind of the political situation in the United States. The United States government does not have time to mess with stuff like this.
Yeah.
It just kind of floats out there.
Yeah.
My thing has always been like the songwriter, for instance. Anytime a song is played on the radio, you get paid X amount of dollars.
Royalties, yeah.
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 I realized that it's not quite the same, but could it be a quarter as much? Yeah. As a radio play, anything close to that, anything that's a little better than what it is could work out. I hope it works out in the future. It's not just Spotify. They're the big one, and they're made out to be the bad guy, but there's lots of situations.
There's all of them, right? Yeah. And I mean, and I'm slowly getting to your new music because I want to talk about YouTube and these type of things where you're able to push your stuff. But just before we go away, and you're talking about how artists are putting this stuff out, and the money is being made by someone. Has that led, I believe it's led to the demise of either some bands or even the lives of some artists because of having to tour so much just to make money, correct? Like, I mean, I'm not saying that's the only reason why, but with touring nonstop, and I mean, you hear names like, I mean, your Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, Shannon Hoon, Winehouse, the list goes on of ones that we've lost. But I mean, the pressures of having to keep that machine going. I mean, we saw it with Elvis Presley when Colonel Parker took the money, right? Colonel Parker was taking the money and Elvis was just the carrot and keep going, right? I mean, will it ever end or?
No, and that's what I always, because whenever you kind of discuss this, there's always somebody that will chime in with, well, you don't have to put your stuff on Spotify. They're like, no, you do. If you don't, if you don't have to do anything. But you were kind of in a situation that's something that you have to do. And it's always going to be that way because everybody used to back in the day talk about how lopsided record contracts are.
Yeah.
Even if you get a great one, they're crazy lopsided. And I always say, there's 4 suckers with guitars in their hands coming around the corner every 5 minutes. And they're all willing to sign whatever. Yeah.
And those record companies are they're looking for a one-hit wonder at least, right? And then
they're hoping for it. Sure.
Yeah.
If they got something coming. So like until the only thing that would change things drastically is if every artist suddenly said, we're not making any more music for 5 years until this gets straightened out. Well, of course, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think that there are organizations like ASCAP and BMI that are acting on behalf of artists to kind of make things a little bit more fair. And they are better than they were. Like YouTube, for instance, pays more than it used to.
Yeah, that's good.
Given time, I think it's going to work itself out. And I think in the process, slowly, artists are going to figure out that record companies are kind of not necessary anymore.
Pretty much.
And when that kind of goes away, there will be a little bit more power in the artist, or at least in other entities like publishers and things.
Well, this COVID situation, like, man, I'm seeing more live artists on social media, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, or doing what we're doing. And, artists are, and I agree, like, to be honest with you, some people say, well, why are they putting a PayPal, pay me? Listen, you don't understand is what I tell some of them. How hard it is to make that money in that industry. And some of these guys have been doing it for years, where they may be those bands that were not a Pearl Jam, not a Foo Fighter, not a Rolling Stones, but they are, like, to me, like I would say like a Dinosaur Jr. or yourself, or where you have the following, but when your stuff is cut off, meaning any engagements or any touring, or, I mean, so you play acoustic guitar and you take requests and you have fun with your fans and you interact. Sure. You're still in your home environment where you're safe from potential stalkers or crazy people, and you're still performing and they're tipping you, and you're still able to keep the lights on if you don't tap into your savings, right? So I want to get to the YouTube point and your new music. So I heard you mention MTV, right? So again, commercialization killed a lot of things. What I mean by that is I don't know what the hell happened to MTV. They went to
No one does. No one does.
Dude, I was up here. We had Much Music, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And so for me, that was like, yeah, man. As a kid, I wanted to see the new video for the new hip song. Sometimes those music videos were abstract and WTF, what was that? And then other times it was like they told a story.
Yep.
And it was creativity, and it was another way to. You didn't have the internet that early. If you did and you were wealthy, it was dial up and it made that noise and it took 15 minutes to get ping pong, right?
Yeah,
but when you watch Much Music, it was a way that I was able to connect with you, or a fan was able to see Slash and Axl or whoever. And instead of picking up a magazine to read it or paying the money, making a trek to see you once in a concert. So then all of a sudden they went to reality TV and all this garbage, and I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I saw your video the other day,
Yeah.
and I went back to the 90s. That was the one for Hyde. Okay, because right away, the style of the video, the music in the intro, the way everything came in, I'm like, this is 90s again. This is real music. This is real music, right? I'm like, this is cool. Like, I'm like, I like this. And then again, I'm listening to it. And when with the vocal parts, a little different than I expected to traditional Breakfast at Tiffany's, or other material you had done, but I liked it. And then the video, it was that, to me, it was that time of, like I said, Smashing Pumpkins, all these bands made videos like that. And I'm like, where did that artistry go? And here I find it on YouTube. And I find it with you. And again, you're self-creating and producing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then the second part of it is you send me a song privately that's not really released yet, to my knowledge, and I listened to it. I didn't catch the name of it because it looked like numbers when I downloaded to listen. So, but to me, I told you in the message that I really appreciated that. Not you sending it to me, but opening it up, and it doesn't sound the same as Hyde. And it doesn't sound the same as everything else that you've done. It's different. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to knock on artists. When I was young, it was that was the thing. That was the thing. Like, I have a lot of respect for, I'll give you a prime example. You listen to Nirvana, whether it Smells Like Teen Spirit, Rape Me, or whatever. Eventually the chord progressions and the strumming, it's repetitive, right? Or the sound is repetitive. Or someone who I admire a lot still, Art Alexis with Everclear. Almost a bunch of their songs were like, like it was the same, right? And the voice. It's not a knock on art. It was just that's what happened in the 90s. I progress now, and I appreciate artists who think outside the box. And if I have an EP with 4 songs, or I have an album with 10 or 12 songs, I'm not skipping past to the next song because it's just like it sounds the same. And I appreciated that when I heard that. And to me, I have more respect and want to engage and want to dive a little deeper when the music is released, because it's not sounding the same. Because every day I don't want to be in the yelling and screaming mood to vent and whatever. I want to be in the poppy mood. Or today it's in a mood where I'm not really feeling it. So music changes with our emotion. And I find that if you're the artist is constantly sounding the same, as I got older, I kind of, I less appreciated it, I guess. Right. So that was awesome. So tell me about the new stuff, and tell me, are you doing most of that stuff on your own, or are you with the band still while producing that? Or we have like a Dave Grohl type thing where you were playing a lot of the things, recording a lot of the things, and then packaging it that way and then play with the band? Or how is that working with you?
Oh, no. Yeah, it's always the band.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I do some solo stuff, but that's under me. But yeah, Deep Blue Something, even if I write 100% of the song, everybody comes over and does their thing on it.
Yeah.
Now, on some songs, I will only have like kind of a raw outline, and because I know they're going to fill in, you know, hey, this is kind of where we're going, and they're like, oh, cool, I want to try this part, you know. But like on the song that I sent you is called "Don't Stop."
Okay, yeah, because it wasn't titled. It showed
I know. I think it was.
and I'm like, what's that guy?
That was our reference code of which mix it was.
Cool.
That's
cool.
why it was so weird. Sorry.
Oh, it was trippy, man. As soon as it went in, I was like, to be honest, like synthesizer part right away. And I won't give it away because people won't know what we're talking about. But I mean, again, as I got older, and I'm Canadian, so I look at Tom Sawyer with Rush, Tom Sawyer, the intro, right? So I hear that. We know it's not the same, but as soon as I heard the first couple bars of it, it was like, whoa, this threw me off, right? So, but it was awesome. And again, like yeah, I'm still thinking about it because I want to revisit it when I get off with you because I'm still trying to process it, and that's a good thing when someone's takes a day or two to process and listen to it. My hearing is not the best because I'm hearing impaired, but as I played musically, but I tend to dissect stuff in songs, and I want to hear portions over here and here, even though I don't pick up what you or hearing able people fully do, because it makes, I guess it fills the song out for me more or less. I mean, it's funny. I'll get back to the song again, but quickly an example is I'm hearing impaired. Somebody laughed about it, but we were listening to a Canadian band called the Strumbellas, and they got a song called the Spirits, or the chorus goes, there's, guns in my head or ghosts in my head, and they won't go. And all of a sudden you hear like you can hear like a whistle, like that pattern. And I could hear it because of the tones that I only hear. And I said, do you hear that? And I was whistling to it, and they go, I don't hear that. Right. And all of a sudden they listened to it, and I was like, see? And they're like, oh, I didn't notice that before. Right. So it's
really interesting.
It's something that you pick up because, like I said, some people, and I guess it depends on what system you were listening to it on, what headphones. This was actually a office phone, believe it or not. I could hear it on an office phone, which is the crappiest quality. Right. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So your guys, obviously, with Deep Blue something, like you said, you guys, I wouldn't say you didn't disband over a decade, right? But not a whole lot was happening. Like what?
We slowed way down, but the band never broke up. There was never this big implosion. And so we got back together, I guess about 2015 or so, and made an EP.
Yeah. We
really enjoyed it. And so we said, hey, we got studios, let's just make records and do stuff for fun. Like this will go back way to like the very, very roots of the band. Yeah. And so that's what we've been doing. And then, with that Don't Stop song in particular, we were all separated because of the COVID thing.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
So I was having to go a little bit further into the production, but sending it to the guys, and I was like, you know what I'm saying? And then everybody would kind of come in one by one, but everybody was on the same page. They're like, no, we get what we're doing. Yeah. Yes, this is gonna have some synths and some drum machines, but I get the vision. And so everybody came by and played their parts, and we did, tried some different ideas. And so it all came together very organically, even though this wasn't our typical procedure.
Was it harder, Todd, doing it that way, or?
Not really, because we can email stuff so quickly, Yeah. Like I had a pretty quick rough sketch of the idea. And so I sent it to everyone, and I said, this is what I'm thinking. And everybody went, oh, got it. So that it wasn't as bad. Mostly because since we all have the same kind of musical background, I wasn't having to explain it. They could tell by the demo, oh, no, totally get it. This is how we're going to do it. And so I would explain kind of what I was looking for, and everybody would enhance that idea. So it's a great way to work. And, we've got several, our idea currently is like, we had Hyde come out a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this new one will come out this month. Our idea is that we'll release a new song every couple of months, instead of working on a full album or an EP.
But you could always repackage it at the end of this, right? And
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that way we just kind of have stuff coming out, and it gives us something to work on. And I think it works because I think people's attention span is a lot shorter.
Yeah.
So it lets them focus on a song, and then you got to give them another one, you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why I said I had to go back and review that song after I talked with you, because I wanted to process it more. But it's funny that you said about, email here, email there. Could you imagine if this was like 1986 and we were all being told to be in our house? Like, you would have to do what you're doing, whether it's a reel-to-reel or put it onto a freaking cassette tape, mail it, because we didn't really have much courier stuff.
Yeah,
really banging off then, and the guy would get it like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later.
Right. But not even that long ago, it wasn't even. It's a fairly recent thing that you can email songs quickly.
Oh,
of any kind of decent file size.
Yeah.
You used to have to burn a CD and then physically mail it to someone. Because the bandwidth was small.
Speaking of the technology and then now, but you're compressing things, right? So compressing in digital changes the quality of sound. So I got to ask you this, my man. Like, you have vinyls?
No,
meaning like you're a collection of your own.
Oh, of my own from back in the day.
So what do you got in your vinyl?
My stuff goes back to the very first record I bought, and which is the first single I ever bought was "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" by Charlie Daniels.
Yeah.
And then, so I still have that single. Kiss Alive, a bunch of Kiss records, some really random stuff. I got all my old Who records.
Yep. Awesome.
The first Asia album.
Okay. Good. It's a good mix. Good mix, right? I mean, I think I had that vinyl too with Tommy with the Who. I had that vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the sound of it. My father-in-law that's all he listens to is vinyl. He doesn't have anything. He's not tech savvy. He doesn't get the computers. And every time we go over there, whether it's a Beatles album or whatever, or he's got Charlie Daniel. Like, it's a mixture of everything. He'll just pop it on, and you hear the little crackle and it's cranked right up. And I kind of appreciate that. I kind of still have a lot of respect. Do you like that vinyls kind of come back, and things are being packaged in and things the way they are, or no, or you want that to be
here's the real thing with modern vinyl. Okay, so back in the day, you would record the record on tape, right? It would then be mixed to tape, and then that mix would be made into a lacquer, and that makes your vinyl. So It's analog. Modern vinyl is just a copy of a digital recording.
Yeah. So it's still.
So it's not.
But does it intrigue? Because young people are starting to snatch those up because cool. So does it teach them again where they actually go back to original vinyls?
Maybe so. And then I guess the main thing is when you play vinyl, you can't do it passively. You're an active participant. Like you mentioned, you have to put the needle on. So maybe that will help because it's an experience. You put the needle on, you get out the jacket, you read the lyrics.
That's the other thing. Yes.
Reading like the production notes. Yes. Even as a kid, where was this recorded and who mixed it?
That is the end of a movie trailer when you watch a movie. Tell the story.
You learn all of these things because you're focused on the experience. So if modern vinyl can get people back to that, to where music is not just something that's playing in the background of a video game, then that's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Like, Todd, I tell you, flipping CDs was a lot harder than flipping vinyl at a music store, right? When you're trying to shuffle through and you pull out and you see them flip the
and they
record
would shift forward, and then you're like, dang it! Yeah, flipping through vinyl was so much easier. Yeah.
See, there's pros and cons, right? And they didn't think that out, right? So, I remember, I was athletic when I was younger, and I remember, I was also in. It was pretty much a garage band. With my buddy, we covered a lot of Nirvana then. But his dad was actually from California, moved up to Canada. His dad was friends with Chris Christopherson, Ronnie Hawkins. Played with his dad was actually in a band with Rick Danko's brother. So he knew everybody from the band. So we're not talking, just nobodies. Like the band was pretty huge. Most of them, they were all Canadian except Levon Helms, right? So we used to play the punk band, and that's really where that type of nostalgia of those old records and record stores and getting into it. Now the CDs, when they came out, I was athletic, so I was a distance runner, and I was a hockey player and a ball player. But I ended up going to Connecticut, and I ran cross country, and I played hockey there. But I remember the Discman. And I tried to run. Like, I mean, I don't mean 100 meter. Like, I was a distance runner, so I ran anywhere from it would be, 3.1 miles up to 7 miles with a Discman, and it'd be like, and I said, get breakfast out, right? And I'm like, what was that? So and I remember trying to listen to November Rain on that. How November Rain went from 14 minutes to like 52 with skipping.
Depending on your pace, you could get your whole 3 miles in the course of that song.
Well, that's the thing, right? It started off with the piano, and somehow it went from 4 bars into the piano to Slash's final solo at the end, and then back into the actual dun 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 dun. Yeah. So that's another one of the thing of who thought this up. A Discman is great, portable. Yeah, I guess you could plug it in. We used to take the tape and stick the tape in the.
Oh, yeah, the cassette adapter. You're saying right.
Like, I mean, we went from what was perfectly fine with vinyl to where we are now in the digital age, but in the middle, in the 90s.
It was a little weird.
Right? But I'm going to say this. I don't care what anybody says. You talk 60s and 70s. Great era for music, because Elvis folded into that right before his passing. You had a lot of great music, but I'm going to say the 90s block from, I guess, 89, 90, I guess Collective Soul or Soul Asylum, those type of things. That start, Nirvana, Green Day, yourself, millions of bands there, whether they were one-hit wonders or whether they had multiple albums from about 89 to 98. It's probably one of the most amazing years, I thought, with creativity and music. I don't know your views on it. Again, you're going to look back to 60s and 70s, but you also have to look back at how many amazing artists there were. And you have to, in my opinion, back then it was easy to have a number one hit single, right? Like Elvis or Richie Valens, because really there was only 4 or 5 artists.
Right, not as much, at the time,
Right, and then in the 70s, Stones, Beatles, The Who, Guess Who, there was a few more, and then they rode in, like you said, Kiss. They rode into the 80s, and then, you had Poison, you had Warrant, you had Guns N' Roses, but then, like I said, you had an explosion of...
Right. It was really the last great era of guitar bands.
Can I say real, authentic? I don't want to offend people. Authentic music, because what I mean by real is, and it's not. And again, you sent me the song today that's synthesized, right? So for me, what I mean by real was a lot of it was plugged into the amp, and it was a bass, drums, and guitar. A lot of live studio recordings, meaning it was done not with some albums like Nevermind, it was double takes, triple takes, but some of it was plugged right in, record, and away they went. Maybe 9 Inch Nails and some of Filter pushed away for like what you released with more synthesized and electronic. But I think, like you said, that 8 years or 9 years there was a lot of good stuff there, eh?
That's the thing. So it was, it wasn't just one type of guitar band.
Yeah.
There were 3 or 4 different genres of guitar-based music that was going on at that time. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a big difference between, let's say Jane's Addiction, Green Day, and then, don't forget how big bands like Hootie and the Blowfish were.
Yes.
Very, very different from each other, but all guitar related.
Yes.
Even if you see a band now that's holding guitars, you can't hear them. The era of the guitar band has gone. Is it coming back? No, it's coming, right? Like even that's because of metal. There's some fantastic.
Yeah, but look at your song. Look at your song, Hide.
Yeah.
The intro. again, my head went 90s, right? Like not that it's a knock, but what I mean is like, yes, we are back, right? Like for me, for what I like is like good, something uplifting, something with a guitar that I can hear the guitar. Like it's back, right?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that there's a re-interest. I know that a lot of young people are interested in the guitar, so hopefully, guitars will become the focus. I mean, things go through waves.
Well, okay, and you said about the three, and it's funny because I did say it in the beginning of the interview. You talked about the Green Day, the Hootie and the Blowfish, and I said, remember how I said there was that, it's stuff it down your throat type of grunge, and then there was the poppy, like I said. So I agree with you. We're on the same wavelength there. And again, Post Malone, thought he was a basketball player until my son, right? I still am kind of boxed into my 90s, but again, when I hear something on the radio, and I don't listen to radio a lot, right? So I don't pick up a lot of new stuff unless I see it on social media. And I don't try to follow social media because there's so much negativity going on. But I saw Post Malone, and thank you, man. I'm like sitting there going, and I talked to Christopher Thorne, who produced his album, and Post Malone all tattooed up, and I'm like, okay, the guy rap? Is he, and I looked at it, wore a dress, pumped out a whole Nirvana set during this, and I was like, thank you, because now all these young kids, all the young kids that are like Post Malone, and this guy just grunged it out for an hour to Nirvana, and I'm like, thank you, right? Because then all of a sudden they're all going to go, hey, and they're going to look into this, right?
Definitely.
So with you guys, I mean, what is the plan moving forward? I mean, we got COVID going on. I know that. Like I said, the stuff I'm hearing from you is very intriguing and interesting. Is there, like you said, you're going to release a song at a time? Maybe when this is kind of over at the end of it, you have something packaged together. How has the reception to the newer stuff been? And so has social media been able to allow you to receive true reception, like from fans, because they'll do an Instagram or a Facebook or whatever versus Rolling Stone saying, oh, yep.
Right. Yeah. So it's really immediate. Like you put something out and people are commenting on it immediately, or sending you, they're sharing it, or they're, sending you a message, that kind of thing. So the interaction with the fans is immediate and it is direct, and you can see it, like on Spotify, for instance, you can see, these are our top 5 cities, and you can see what's going on in real time.
So does that influence you then, as far as going out on the road? So you know where your top cities are
in theory, you would be able to say, oh, hey, like for us in the United States, Chicago is our big city, so we got to make sure you play Chicago.
Yeah.
You can also look for weird anomalies, like for whatever reason over the past 6 months, and we still cannot figure out why. Australia is going insane. For a little while, our top 5 cities on Spotify, I mean, we're all Australian cities, like bigger than London. London has always been our biggest city in the world. But Australia occupied the top 5. We still can't figure out why. It's crazy.
From what I know from Aussie, like talking to Aussie people that live over there, like they're music junkies. Like they are really music junkies. And you see, and it's funny. I spoke also with J.R. Richards from Dishwalla, like the original singer from Dishwalla. Yeah. He was telling me the same thing, that for some reason with him, it's Asia or Thailand. Like they love them. And he said, it all depends. I think that, certain areas are very heavy on a certain genre, or they like a certain decade. Like, for example, when I lived in Europe for a few years, I told JR, because JR is living in England right now, and I also spoke with Right Said Fred about stuff, and I chatted and I said I found it funny because when I went to Belgium, when I lived there in the late 90s, I'd walk into a bar and I would hear Cuts Like a Knife by Canadian Bryan Adams, or Summer of '69, or I Love Rock and Roll was just nonstop played, right? So it's a genre, it's an era and a genre or a certain style. So obviously Silverchair had some massive global success, but they're huge in Australia.
Mhm.
They were obviously following suit to more of a Nirvana or a heavier. But if you paid attention to Daniel Johns as he progressed, he went more pop and went more. And I think they're a little more open over there as far as for taste in music. They like their pop, even Kylie Minogue, the dance, right? So they love their music, but they're open-minded more. So something that might not take in a certain area with your music, I think they're a little more open-minded. And that's what J.R. Richards had said, is that Thailand or some Asian countries, they're more open-minded and they really love their pop rock or their type of uplifting music, more happy, not your total death music. But yeah, so I won't take you too much longer. We're almost an hour in, and that's how most of my interviews go, is a lot of people quite enjoy it, and it's time goes fast. But I want to go back to, I'm gonna post your stuff, obviously the new song I Can't, but I'm gonna post a link to the video to Hide when I do release this. I'll release this episode probably next week. So on Spotify and Apple and YouTube, I'll have links to your, the band stuff, the new music. But for people who are listening to the interview, and I mean, they're going to know you, and I mean, they're going to know you from obviously the biggest song. But what I want to do is, people that may not know you, is get them introduced to you, but also I want to keep fans continuing listening to you. So what I want to do for the new people is, I just want to quickly go all the way back to the beginning and ask, where did Deep Blue Something come from? How did the name, and how did it quickly start? And what year was that roughly?
Okay, so I graduated college in 91. And my brother had transferred colleges because he had a different major. And so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. My parents were pressuring me to go ahead and get my master's degree. Okay. So Toby had transferred up to Denton, which is part of Dallas-Fort Worth, a big music scene, big music school. And so he calls me and says, "Hey man, there's bands everywhere. Mom's pressuring you to go to graduate school. Come up here and we'll start a new band." Okay. And so I was like, fine, because I didn't know what I was going to do. So I headed up there, and he was right. There were clubs everywhere, bands, 3 bands a night, every single night. Let's just do it. So we started the band. We were originally called Leper Messiah, okay, which to us was a reference to Ziggy Stardust. We didn't know Metallica had a song called Leper Messiah. So at first, some people thought that we were some kind of Metallica tribute band. Okay, we're like, well, I like Metallica as much as the next guy, but that's not us. So we got to change the name.
Yeah.
So we had this really long space epic that we still play it sometimes. It's like 15 minutes long, and it had been entitled Deep Blue Something, right? Not for any particular reason. It just sounded vague. And so when we were trying to figure out a new name, we just guessed that was as good as anything else. And all band names are kind of stupid when you overanalyze them.
Yep.
So it's as good as anything else. It sounds ambiguous and vague, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of got us. And so we changed in, I guess, 93 to Deep Blue Something. And we were already like out on the circuit, selling places out, getting bigger and bigger. Released a couple of indie records. Somehow or other, Bergus and Tiffany's found its way onto the radio, and all those companies that had told us no suddenly were telling us yes. And you know what I'm saying? It went from there, but it was very much your college indie band success story.
Yeah.
We had no contact with anyone. We didn't know anything other than, well, we can go to this studio and record live, and it doesn't cost too much. And we were making enough to pay for the recording, to press up some CDs.
But that's the 90s, right? Like, I mean,
and you could do it then. And a big factor in that was, it was popular at the time to go and watch a band play live.
Yeah. That
was a popular thing to do. And so that helped a lot of bands on that circuit,
Well, it's funny you said with the college. Again, I was listening to XM the other day. Ed Kowalczyk popped up on there, and he said something about the song. I think he was referring to Selling the Drama, and he said literally they wrote the song, they handed it to a college radio and said, "Oh man, my life will be made if it just it just ended up on college radio," and then boom, and then the funny thing you're talking about, like with your band name, how you're talking about that. Well, it's like things like Better Than Ezra, right? Like that's how the 90s were, right? And it just, I don't know if it had meaning or it didn't have meaning just what we did in the 90s, right? But it left an impact. And I mean, even your song, I mean, like you said, it took off, and I hate this because I hate using the word, and you always, you'll bring it up in an interview or somebody will put it up in a magazine about one hit wonder. Well, the problem I have with that is that who determines what a hit is? Yes, I guess a hit means played on billboards so long, but there's some damn good music from a lot of good artists that they're like, where was this song? Like, this song is better than the one hit wonder they had. And it's all because someone chose not to air it, or the gatekeepers, like you said. And I think that's disheartening, and it kind of discredits a lot of bands, because there's music I found out there that I've absolutely amazing. When I've showed people that, I'm like, I've never heard that song before by a certain band, and they're like, whoa, and they're like, what album was this on, right? And then it was the third album, but guess what? Because they had the one hit wonder on the first album, the second album didn't do as great. There were still good songs, but by the third album, they were dropped. Listen to this song, right? And they hear it and go, wow. Like, so I think the word, to me, I hate the word one hit wonder. But like you said, when Breakfast came out, I mean, obviously that immediately changed the realm of things and the seriousness of things. From then until now, is there anything you would have changed or regretted, or would you have kept everything the same?
Probably kept things for the most part the same. I mean, because you got to think, all these years later, that song gives us so much opportunity.
Yep.
It would have been great if, the next single had been big too, and all that kind of stuff. But in some ways, our problem with our second single, for instance, was, Breakfast at Tiffany's was still getting played too much.
Yep.
And so a radio station is always reluctant to add another song by the same band into the rotation.
Yep.
And so we kind of killed our own second single.
But you said earlier, you released that song in an era where we didn't have just Elvis and Buddy anymore. We had 1,000 or 1 million, and you had a hit. And
it found its way.
We said it's harder to have a hit or a number one hit or a hit song now, or when you had it, than back in 1950. So you have to be still okay with that, right? I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah, and you have to be thankful. I feel the most sorry for people who get really caught up and bitter that they didn't have more. And I'm like, or some, like you mentioned Warrant in passing earlier. I saw that in this interview with the singer for Warrant, and he so much hated being known for cherry pie, and he ended up taking his own life. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. And I mean, Warrant,
people with that, and you're letting that get to you.
Yeah.
That's horrible. I mean, the music scene changed anyway.
Yes.
Bands don't get to go on forever.
That's right.
So you gotta have fun with the success you had, and you gotta be thankful for it. And in our case, again, it gives us so much opportunity to this day. So it's cool.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, even now, like there's only so many Aerosmiths, or, I would say maybe Pearl Jam, where they last so long, or
Rush,
or U2, or Rush, or right there. And again, we're not talking, like, I don't think there's even 50 of those. Right? Like, I mean, there's not. So that is rare. That is as rare as getting a hit song when you did. So you're in that conversation. Now, I will give props to you, because I have conversations with people who listen to music, and I judge an artist on one thing and one thing only. That is, maybe I'm a dick for doing it, and you can tell me this, but how do they sound when they play acoustic?
Yeah.
Because that tells me
everything.
Yeah.
And I have heard you guys play acoustically. There was a couple. I think there was one version. Yeah, and the one version was Breakfast, and it was acoustically. But you can sing. You sound well acoustically. That tells me that you have musical talent. I know people that, like you said, they sold the records. As soon as you strip it down,
yeah.
Good God, right? And again, Nirvana, you can give credit to, because although Kurt made it work and probably wasn't vocally as good as, even yourself maybe, but it worked for him, and their Unplugged session, they pulled it off.
And did a really great job of it.
That shows talent, right? So even though everyone says, oh, it's 3 chords, 4 chords, and Kurt, and I hate myself and I want to die and all that, but they stripped it down, and it was elegant. And it was.
A lot of bands can't do that.
No.
Especially if you're a heavier genre and you try to do it, sometimes it's a disaster.
So for me, viewing you as an artist is you're a legitimate artist to me, because I watched it several times, the acoustic on YouTube or version somewhere, and I don't want to say it's better, like it's better than the original, because you hear the original, you like the song, but you sit there and go, damn, that is really good. Like the vocals are good. No. And I mean, it's the same thing. Like I said, I'll give the kudos like to a person like Eddie Vedder, like the song Black, when they did it in Unplugged, it was like, holy crap. But because you didn't know how much his studio affected on their album, right? But you are in that category of those 90s art, not even 90s, just artists. Like there's certain artists that I'm blown away by of what they were able to do when they're not being influenced electronically or tampered with on an album. So to me, you rank up there, and I appreciate the time that you've given me today. It's been an hour, so I don't want to take you up too much more here. So I will just say that I'm thankful to have you jump on with me. And like I said, I will, if there's any information that you have coming up or anything with the band that you want to share, if you want to quickly chat about that, that's cool. And I can help dig the links up and maybe post that stuff for people.
Great. Yeah.
Sure. If you have anything, just shout it out there, man.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. The new single should be coming out within the next few weeks. We do have the standard, Deep Blue Something on Instagram and Facebook. So if anybody, get on there. We're not hyper aggressive about posting, but at least we keep the news in people.
Correct. Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll share Instagram and any social media links in the YouTube video of this, and as well the audio versions, and the new song coming out next month is, again, it's not numbers, because
it's called Don't Stop.
Okay, Don't Stop. So what I'll do is I'll make sure I share Hide from a few months that came out, and that's actually why I reached out to you, because A, you were on my playlist, B, I did see that video, and I was like, yeah, I liked the stuff that I saw from you in the past. So I wanted to talk to you. And again, while we're down and out with all this stuff, any new stuff that's coming out, I'm like, hey man, the listeners will like that. It's more exposure on social media, even though you don't need the exposure. I should be thankful that you jumped on. And Todd, I want to wish you well, and stay safe during all this. Your family and your kids, stay safe. And I hope to hear some good things from you guys in the future here. Okay.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care, and I appreciate you jumping on.
All right. See ya.
Yeah. Bye.